Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digital to Dice podcast. I am Dave.
I'm Ron.
And Ron, it's episode 179, and that's what it feels like outside, 179 degrees.
You look warm. You look warm. We had 88 in town yesterday. It was a record for Burlington. It's same temperature in Boston, too.
Yeah, I was outside working in the yard, and I got real hot and tired real fast. It really was hot out there.
Not surprised. Just into the air conditioner running and all that. And today it's a much more April-like 60 here, but it was nice. So wife and I went out to lunch, had a date. We'll get into the details of that. It was certainly eventful. But, you know, it's nice after being stuck inside for the better part of 6 months off and on to be able to sit outside and have a meal.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably why you hear Ron's AC in the background. He's kind of noisy today. It's just nothing we can do, so we do apologize for the sound quality over there because
welcome to summer in New England, you know?
Yeah. Hey, a couple of things here. Ways to get a hold of us. Digital to Dice. Right. Digital to Dice at digitaltodice.com is the website. Digital to Dice at yahoo.com is the email. So if you want to
Thundering Turtles.
Yeah. And again, there was someone posted in the Facebook group looking for the Fast Action Football PDF that I created a couple of years ago. That's the best way to get a hold of us. Digital to Dice at yahoo.com. Boy, I'm still getting in emails for the APA Hockey Excel helper. I've probably sent out 20 or 30 of those. So I'm interested to know if I did send you the helper, how it's working for you. Have you modified it at all? Is it speeding up your game? I played a game last night while Ron was actually doing his baseball game. He did a Friday night baseball game, I think, last night, right? No, Thursday night.
Right.
Thursday night.
Yeah.
And I was playing the APA here on the helper, and it definitely makes the game go faster. It just all the rolls at once, and it just makes everything nice and easy. So I'm still sending out the APA Hockey Excel helper, if you will. So let me know how it's working out. But anyway, the email is digitaltodice at yahoo.com. The text line, 978-751-DICE, if you'd like to send us a text. The Facebook group is facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. And if you'd like to be a Patreon of the show and help us pay the monthly bills over here, we do have a Patreon account. It's patreon.com/digitaltodice. Now, before we get going,
yes,
I have a big enough. By the way, today we're going to be talking about obstacles. Okay, whether they're physical obstacles or mental obstacles, any kind of obstacle or hurdle that might prevent you from playing a game in some sort of way, and we'll explain that more when we get into that topic. We got a lot of feedback on obstacles in our game.
A lot of good feedback.
Good feedback too. Yeah. Before we get going, though, our friend Ray, who does the Around the Layout Model Railroad podcast. So check that out, Around the Layout, if you're into model trains. He sent me this message late last night. And I was like, Ray, what is this? And he goes, well, congratulations to you and Ron. And I'm like, I still didn't get what he was sending to me. Apparently, there's a site called Listen Notes, and it tracks podcasts.
Publicly published podcasts.
Publicly published podcasts all over the world.
Don't say that 5 times fast.
Yeah. Apparently, there is, what do we say? There's
3,084,000 publicly published.
Yeah, I think they just upped that to 85,000. So 3,085,000 podcasts out there, right?
Yes.
Digital to Dice is in the top 2.5%.
The most listened to podcasts.
Of most listened to podcasts in the world. So,
that's incredible.
I'm going to give a big applause. So,
thank you.
We first want to thank our Patreon supporters who have helped us continue this show as we will be shortly wrapping up year 4.
It's unbelievable.
And starting year 5 at Digital to Dice. And then, so thank you to them. We want to thank you to all the listeners of the show, because it's you that are putting us on the map here.
Absolutely.
And Ron, congratulations to you. You know.
Well, and you as well.
And it's an I had no idea.
Neither did I.
I mean, that's pretty impressive. You got over 3 million, almost 3.1 million podcasts out there. Now, granted, there's probably a lot of scrubs and some that have faded out or whatever, but out of the almost 1 million podcasts out there, we're in the top 2.5%. I thought that was pretty incredible.
That's mind-blowing, to be honest.
I had no idea. Seriously, I had no idea.
Considering what we talk about is very unique to a very small community. It's such a niche thing. Ray and his great podcast, there are a lot of people who get into model railroading, much more so than sports sims and replays, which is what we do. But, yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, we found that out last night. That was really darn cool. So thank you so much.
It was nice news to wake up to this morning.
It was, because sometimes we do the show week after week after week, and, we just wonder, is anybody listening? Sometimes we get feedback, sometimes we don't. And then to see this, it's like, well, there are people listening out there. Absolutely, when we see that come down the pipeline. So anyway, thank you so much for that. Let's see. Should we get into what we're playing?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll go first this week.
I've been. The music?
Oh, okay. I'll play the music. Since we already covered the weather,
that's right.
It's hot for April.
It's hot. Of course, it's hot.
Yeah. I've been bitten by the apple bug.
Yes, you have.
I have been bitten by the apple bug, and so I've been playing. So I was playing still my 79 baseball league, and I've been mixing that up with a lot of different games, as you know. Back to basics and pocket pennant run and strat.
Don't you have 6 games for that
season
now?
Ticket, Status Pro. Yeah, I've been playing a lot. Digital Diamond is that. I'm loving the companion there because now the Status Pro. I've been playing Status Pro. It's just been it's been so good. So I've been playing a lot of that, but for some reason I pulled out the app and I played the 1980 World Series, and I also played the 1970 World Series, and I just been having so much fun with that. It's not even funny that how much I've been enjoying that with APBA. So I actually went and I picked up a couple of APBA seasons because I only had 1980, and I had 78 that Tebow sent me, but it's the older cards, and I do like the newer cards. They're a lot brighter. There's more information on there, and the master symbols, whatever. But so I just like the newer cards. So I rebought 78 and 88 so I could play those seasons there. So I got some APBA going on here, some APBA baseball. On top of that, listener of the show, Bob, sent me 1905 and 1908 APBA baseball. And he said he was listening how I've been enjoying APBA, and I was playing the older stuff. He goes, hey, would you like 1905? I'm not going to play it. And then he says, something? He said, Ron, you were talking about 1908. And he goes, I even have that. I won't play it. So if you can play.
I honestly think if you were to do an extended baseball project and not just pick and choose games and do that, they're 2 18 leagues, and they're 2 very intense pennant races. And your playing style goes quite well into dead ball. Don't want to use the bullpens. Lots of bunting, lots of hit and runs, and lots of steals. I think you'd have an absolute blast doing 19-8.
I might. So I have 19.
We'll even have to get you a Cubs hat because that was up until 2016.
Oh, right. It was.
They won the World Series.
Yeah. So thanks to Bob for sending me those seasons there. I'm really going to enjoy that. So, yeah, I've been really playing more APBA baseball than some of the other baseball games. I've just really been enjoying it. I've been playing some more hockey. I got Hockey Bones back on the table, and also APBA hockey. I've been kind of alternating between the two. I'm still trying to figure out if there's a clear winner between Hockey Bones and APBA hockey, and there's not. There's just some things that Bones does better, and there's other things that APBA does better. And so I don't have a clear winner. They're both exactly the same, and I enjoy them playing. I enjoy them playing for different reasons. Some things I look forward to playing Bones for, and some things I look forward to playing APBA for. And so I just really enjoy both of them. So I've been playing both of them. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I played. No, it's mostly been baseball and the hockey there. Oh, I did wrap up the 1980 World Series product, so that's wrapped up and done. In Hockey Bones, I just started my Minnesota North Stars replay. I'm going to follow them through as far as I can in the playoffs. So they started off against Boston, and they swept Boston in 80-81. So I'm going to play them and get as far as I can, and that'll end the product. They lost Game 1 in Boston by 1 goal. It was a great game with 27 penalties. Just, we
were going through the other night. It's like, guess how many penalties minutes this team had. Between the two, They had 3,400 penalty minutes
Yeah.
between the two teams.
Yeah, no, so there's going to be a lot of penalties in
Talk
that
about
series.
some obstacles there.
Yeah, we talk about obstacles in games. So when I get a ton of penalties, it's like, oh boy, really? Is this where we are right now?
That's the era, though.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, what else did I play here? Let me see. Mostly, I did a video on the new Dice app, and I put it on YouTube.
Yes.
That's the one I've been using.
That's just on cell phone only. That's not for computer, right?
Yeah, it's just cell phone only. So, but it's called Dice. It's free, but if you want to add dice to it and add colors, you do have to watch an ad. But for $1.99, it opens everything up. So for $1.99, I opened it up, and I did a video showing how you can change the dice, change the colors. You can set up for strat. You can set up for what else? Pocket pen. I mean, it's got all different kinds of dice, from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-sided dice, 8, 10, 12, 20, 30, 100, if you will. It just has everything in there. So
you ever handled the 100-sided die?
I haven't. Just like a big marble,
I was about to say, it looks like one of those everlasting gobstoppers. I mean, you have to have pretty good vision to read it because there's so many sides there. But yeah, it's a marble, essentially. It's almost like a golf ball.
Yeah, I can't imagine that would last very long. You know what I mean?
The novelty, I think, would wear off pretty quick.
Yeah. The idea being that it just... to get, I don't know how you'd even read what it landed on because it's so tight. We need a huge one to roll to be able to read that clearly, and just the idea that those sides would wear off. Because I remember back in the day.
Oh yeah,
back in the day, when we were playing Dungeons and Dragons in 1982, we had that 20-sided die, and you'd go over somebody's house, and that 20-sided die. The edges wore off from rolling it so much that it would only land on certain numbers. The rest of it was just smoothed out. So I could imagine that 100-sided die would do that pretty darn quick.
Yeah, it would turn into a golf ball pretty quick.
Yeah, it would be. But this app, Dice app, will roll the dice for you. You can even lock a die. So if you get a roll and you need to keep a couple for some reason, you can just roll whatever's left. Very handy for $1.99. I've been using it instead of rolling dice. It's just a little bit easier for me. It helps with streaming, so dice don't fall off the table. They don't make a lot of noise. Because that's one thing that drives me nuts is when I play my videos or if I watch someone else's video and you hear clank, 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 clank. You know what I mean? On the dice tower. It's like, ugh, even though I have a padded dice tower, I don't always use it. But just dice noise, sometimes it can be like, oh boy. So this doesn't make any noise. I
use ball roller.
Yeah, I do that sometimes too. But when I'm playing by myself, it's nice to have the phone right in front of me and I just tap on it, rolls the dice, and I'm done. And they're nice and big too. And I found a way to fit them into the new Digital Diamond 11, version 11, where there used to be the field took up the whole screen in 10. Now they've shrunk the field down like to about 80%. That now allows me to put some things on the screen like the cards. I can put the app of cards on the screen with a second camera, and I can also get the dice roll, whether it's ball roller or this app, and I can put that in the middle between the batter and the pitcher card. So it works out well having this new setup here for streaming. It allows me to put a lot more on the screen and not block the game, so to speak. So that was kind of fun. But that's pretty much what I've been playing is some baseball and some hockey, and then I'm really enjoying it all quite a bit.
Cool. First, I want to give a shout out to Brian Martin. Brian, we talked about this a few weeks ago, released Six Pack Bowling. All-time great sets in 4 past seasons, picked through ASG games and whatever. And picked it up, and I liked it. And, there's a couple things percolating in the back that they had to do with it. And someone on Delphi, one of the boards on Delphi says, these cards are running hot, like 3 or 4 pins higher than what they should be. And he showed his work. It wasn't just some disgruntled guy that said, this game is terrible because everyone bowls too high. But, I said, I just rolled X amount of games and everything was consistently high. And Brian said, okay, well, let me take a look. And if they are, then we'll remedy the situation. Well, Brian did some back of the envelope testing with his cards, and lo and behold, they were running 4 or 5 pins high. And so Brian, being the sporting guy that he did, has re-released all the cards on PDF with the corrected numbers on them. And I'm sure that for those who bought printed sets, I'm sure that Brian or George will be in contact to see, what people want for that. Mm-hmm. The actual quick play cards were fine, so it was just the frame by frame rolls. But I give any game creator a lot of credit for going, nope, my bad, my formula was wrong, and to make what I think is a very good game even more playable. But so if you're concerned about that, I believe the emails went out for those a couple days ago. I grabbed mine, and so kudos for Brian for recognizing that it was a legitimate mistake and correcting it. Mm-hmm. Let's see, what have I been playing? The Action PC 2001 Season Odyssey. We're through June. It just seems like I started this, and we're 3 full months into the season. My All-Star game is like a week from Wednesday. No real changes in the divisions, although the White Sox are having a hell of a year. It's interesting. We're going to play a Dave Gardner game next week.
Oh, really?
Dave Gardner game being two teams that aren't necessarily at the top of their games, because normally we try to go for the better teams because that's what people want to watch. But we're hitting our second round of Interleague next week, just before the All-Star break. I'm sure everyone was thrilled. And there are not a lot of juicy matchups or matchups that we had featured before. The Yankees and Mets, I think, are playing that weekend. We already did a Yankee-Met game. So I'm seeing there on the schedule Toronto and Montreal, who are two bottom-feeding teams in 2001. And so next Friday, we're doing the Blue Jays and the Expos.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I would always say, well, why don't you play the bottom teams and this and that and the other thing? You're like, well, nobody wants to watch that. And it's like, well, but still, you got to play everybody, right? Well, I'm doing 1979 right now in baseball, and I'm finding that same thing. It's just like I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm in the mid-August because I've been skipping ahead quite a bit in my replay. And I am looking at it's like, here comes the schedule. It's like, why do I want to play, Braves and Mets? They're each 30 games out. Why would I play that game? It has no bearing. So I see where you're coming from. But at the same time, I said to after I played the last game in 79, I'm playing a ton of Orioles games. I just am. I need to play more Pirates because they got to the finals too. But I said, something, I am going to play a garbage game. I'm going to play two teams that have no shot just so I can get them on the table, because I like to play everybody, because I printed out every team. And you
print them out, and I think for that it's easier to do because you took the effort to do it.
So I'm going to play a couple of, a couple teams that are out of it there, call it the whatever game, and then I'll get back to the top teams.
And the reason why I would do the top teams, especially now, there's 6 divisions. If you sit there and if you go through and do often 2 also rans, you're missing something else. And there's just a lot more to keep track of. And so the weekend before the All-Star game, I don't know. I try to get hot teams on early, knowing that once they fall off, they're not going to be back on. And the reason why other teams may not make it until later on in the year is then they might be playing important games late in the season against contenders, and those games have got to go on. That's the season. So
I try to play when I look at like what happened that year, I'll try to play some of the bottom teams right out of the gate, just to get them some face time, what I mean? And then I can say, hey, at least I played everybody at least once. So at least when I'm not in July or August or September, I'm like, geez, I haven't played this team. I know they're 30 games out, but I haven't played them yet. So I like to kind of get everybody a little bit of time, whether it's I'm streaming or whether I'm just playing by myself. I like to play everybody, so I like to get that stuff done early in the season. That's just how I do it.
Yeah, I hear you. So don't know. I usually plan my games out a couple weeks in advance. And, of course, you can change it any time. That's the beauty about a computer is it's not like you're flying a real crew back and forth. Like, oh, this team fell apart the last 2 weeks. Why are we just going this when you got that? So yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is the fifth replay I've done, and I honestly don't know how many times a team appears. We try not to have a team appear more than once a week. But, if you got the top 2 teams in the division and they're one game apart, chances are you might get a second stream of, second helping of that, depending, especially now with the second half of the season. What else have I been playing? Jams, Eve, downloaded the rules again for Motorsport. Someone wants me to do that. I've been trying to think of new projects, and we've got a couple new games to look at, which I don't think I can talk about. So always looking at that sort of thing, and been busy. The wife was off last week, and so really didn't get that much gaming time. And the weather is turning nicer here. But that's the new Status Pro League I made for myself. I did a video on that. Really enjoying that. Again, I think it's important for, especially when you do I don't want to say it's a greatest hits project, because there's only like one or two real super teams. There's no terrible teams, but no one's really, really good. So that's going to get some attention too.
Sounds good.
So that's about what I've been playing.
I've been playing a little bit more since the busy season stopped for me, but now with the good weather here, it's kind of like working the yard season. So I've been outside, preparing my lawn to get overseeded and fertilized. So I've been outside, and what has been so dang hot up there. I've been, I go outside, I come in, I'm soaked and dusty. I take a shower. It's like, now I'm too tired to play anything. So hopefully that season will pass soon enough, and I'll get everything ready so I can get back to playing. So it has been fun. Like these games I've been playing, whether it's a one-off or whether part of a project, it's good. Right. It's good therapy, really is, to get back and play these things. So anyway, all right. So should we get on to our topic of the day?
We got a bunch of things to go through with that.
Yeah, we do. Here we go. Alrighty, so we threw this out, as we do sometimes. We usually start with our Discord, and we start with our Patreon supporters and get their feedback first on some of these things. And sometimes it'll bleed over to our Facebook group as well. So if you're not a Patreon, then definitely head over to our Facebook group and jump on that.
1,300 plus on Facebook.
Yeah, and then we bounce a lot of ideas. We start with, like I said, we usually start with a Patreon, and once in a while we go to the Facebook group as well. So that's something you definitely want to jump over and join up on the Facebook there, so you can get involved in the discussion. But we asked, what were some of the obstacles and hurdles that you face, whether they're physical or whether they're mental? And we talk about that on the show sometimes, that you come downstairs and you look, it's like, okay, what haven't I played in a while? I need to play something I haven't played in a while, because I have all these games, and we all have our favorites, but sometimes I like to attack the pile of shame and find a game or a season I haven't played. And sometimes you put your hand on it and you're like, oh, this is the game that does X. And it's like, do I really want to get involved in that?
How patient can I be?
Yeah, it's like
on the wall. Oh, it's 10:25 at night. How patient am I going to be?
Yeah, what am I going to play? So we threw that out to the audience, and top 5 answers are on the board. Now we got a lot of answers, actually.
Oh yeah.
So let's start with some of the people in our Discord, and the pesky Paul says he goes, he's married with 4 active kids, so time is the biggest obstacle.
We've talked about that before, and yes, I mean, you got to be able to balance what you want to do, and it's not like he's got adult kids. His kids are young and active.
Yeah, so so time's the biggest thing with him, and he says it has to be on the PC, something he can play quickly with little setup and generates the stats so he can get immersed in the experience. So he's kind of like maximizing his game time in between the family time. So
most bang for the buck, absolutely.
Yeah, that is that. Yes, it is. Let's see. David C. says some of the biggest obstacles he faces when playing cards and dice is the actual space the game takes to play. Cards, charts, dice, score sheets, and even a computer copy of the rules. That all takes up space. It really does.
You talked about that recently with APA. That some of the more recent chart books are oversized.
Yeah, I'm still trying.
It's Rand McNally.
Yeah, I have the new book, which is huge. I think it's 11 by 14, but when you open it up, it's 22 by 14, and I get no place to put it here. So I've been using the book that Tebow sent me, which is the Premier Edition, but I guess it doesn't have some of the symbols that the newer cards have. That's what I'm hearing.
The newer season cards have Ks because strikeouts have gone through the roof, so to get pitchers enough strikeouts, and then R's, which in some cases can take away a strikeout and put the ball in play.
Yeah, so I don't think that book has those, but that book fits so nicely in front of me. So I'm trying to find a way that I can get the newer book. Now, there is a smaller version of the newer book, but I guess it's super hard to find, and they don't sell it anymore. So, I'm not sure what to do with that. But anyway, so I might try to scan the big book and then shrink it down and print it into a smaller book here, and maybe that'll work. I don't know. But yes,
take pictures on a cell phone to do that.
Yeah, that doesn't really.
But it's got to be clear. You got to be able to know what you're getting.
Yeah, no, it does. That doesn't really work very well when I do that.
To get back to David's point, having the space for me playing a Peter cards and dice game, it all has to be PDF, and so how many PDF tabs do I have open at one time? And do you get confused? And at some point, can you close out one of them? And so, yes, that definitely is a factor there.
Yeah, space is a thing. Even on the computer, like you said, space is a thing.
Right.
So he goes on to say, sometimes the space need to play isn't available or worth the setup time to actually play. And he says, I understand these are all excuses, but sometimes I just don't have the time and the desire to pull out everything needed to play a game or two. That's exactly...
Well, setup is huge.
What we were talking about. Obstacles. If it's going to be, in your mind, knowing what it's going to take to get this game played, and it's a space thing, and we all have our little gaming spaces, but sometimes stuff gets put on the table, or I have the microphone on here today to do the podcast, so
right.
My table's kind of taken up, so I would need to play something small like a shootout or something, and so sometimes the space comes and goes a little bit, and that's exactly the point we were trying to make. Is it is it a space thing? And for some people it is, and even though you might like to play the game, so
setup is a factor.
Yeah, and he said that sometimes he'd like to have a dedicated gaming space so he could leave it out on the table, and that way there, the kids wouldn't get into it, or the dogs wouldn't get into it, or whatever it is, and he could just leave it there. I have that luxury down here in Studio A downstairs, as I cleaned up a big portion of the basement and just put down a big, like a buffet table there. What do you want to call it? Banquet table. I don't know. What is it? 48 by whatever, And I just, so that's my space over there that I kind of use. It is a catch-all, but if I clear it off, I have a gaming table that I can leave set up. So yeah, David C., that's a good one. Alan says one of his biggest obstacles is in a particular game, the choice of colors on one side of the card. The soft pastel color and the gray background makes it unreadable for me.
He's specifically talking about the advanced side of a strat card.
Yep, the blue-green color blindness, he says. Yep.
Yep, and that I could see being an issue. You remember when you were a kid and someone would pull out the password game and you put the thing into the red slider so you could read the word?
Yeah.
Sometimes I could definitely see that being an issue, especially if you're tired.
Yeah.
Now, Strat has changed the font, and now in good situations where there is or runner reaching a base, they've now bolded that, so you can kind of see that easier on a card. But if you pull out a Strat card from the early 90s or something like that, the symbols are there, but there's no differentiation. It's all the same size font in there. And so, so at least with them bolding the font, you can kind of tell, okay, that's a good, or depending on your situation. But I could definitely see that.
Yeah, he said he had to rewrite the action deck of basketball and hockey on the index cards, or retype the X chart for baseball into a large font just to make it playable. So
a lot of these games are not older eye friendly.
Yeah, so I can see that as well. So so colors on cards that don't mix well together. Yep, I can see that. And you see,
I have a very hard time with red and blue together.
Really?
I have an astigmatism for that. And so, like, playing the Mets could drive me nuts because my eyes will start to go nuts from doing that. But again, you know it's going to happen, and you just look away. But no, that's a very real issue when it comes to gaming.
Now, Turbocharged Sports says confusing or poorly written and non-comprehensive, too brief or concise, unclear rule books and instructions. Yes, rule books and instructions.
We've done shows on that.
We've done shows on that. Yeah, that's something where it's like you go to play a game, and you're like, oh man, do I really want to do this? deal with this again or whatever. So
how much do you want to fight with the game to play the game? I think is what he's simply trying to say. And yeah, if you go through it, like what?
Yeah, it's like, do I really want to attack this huge rule book? Now, sometimes, you read this monster rule book and it's intimidating, and you're like, oh, forget it. But like the Hockey Bones example, when I actually sat down and made my coffee, and put on classical music and gave myself some time to read it, it really was not the dragon that I thought it was.
Did you butter up a croissant and put on some Beethoven?
I did better than that. I had some soda crackers. So.
Oh!
I'm kidding.
Premium for you. Right?
But I can see, like, if you go into the rule book, it drives you nuts, and you go back to a game, and sometimes they're still not making any sense. So yeah, I can see that.
You might get through some of that hurdle, and then find another hurdle after you cleared the first one, and that gets you even more frustrated.
I find that if you find one hurdle in a rule book or something that just doesn't make sense to you, chances are there's going to be a lot more, because they're just coming at it at an angle that you're not, and you're just not seeing what they're saying. That's kind of how I look at that, where it's just like, they know what they're saying, but they're not projecting it in a way that I can understand it. And sometimes that's just individuality. And I've done that with many, many rules, and I've, contacted people, and they're like, oh, I can see how you think that way, but it's not that way. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm thinking. So, anyway, he goes on to say, some games are not detailed enough. The slice of time is too broad. So while stats and wins and losses might be correct, the action is too top level. So, and in a way, you've talked about that too. Is when if you're going to play a game that's a long game, but you're not going to get the full stats, you're not going to get the full meal out of it. That can be frustrating too. That's a hurdle too. It's like, do I want to sit down and play this game and only get?
If I can play a game of something in 40 minutes, I want to be able to get the full package out of it. If I'm not saving any time, now if I'm doing a quick play game or a final score game, that doesn't matter. But if you're going to make me play a game that's long enough that it would take me the same amount of time to play another game of the same sport, that's like, no, not doing that.
Yeah. And he says the opposite of that is sometimes games are too detailed and take too long to play.
Well, for me, the obstacle of that is, yes, there is one game specifically that we've talked about before that takes about 3 hours from start to finish. And again, if you are it's a specific fan of that sport, then you're going to do it, because the detail on that really does pay off. But again, how much of that do you want to chew, and do you have a weekend to run one event?
Yeah, and he put in capital letters here, like, no season replays. So when you got a game that's a lot of detail and it takes a long time to play, they're fun to play, but yeah, that's not something you could do a long replay with. Maybe if you were retired or something like that and you did have the time, but, so yeah.
You'd have to be such an intense fan of whatever particular sport to make it worth your while.
Yeah, and I'll throw this out here. I'll name names. The FTP hockey game. Was it Rinkside or something like that?
Is that the Gilbert?
No. This is the FTP game.
Okay.
I think it's called Rinkside, and Peter Miller is the only one that's done a video on it. And we've been going back and forth on email a few times, and he tells me, he goes, oh, yes, it's a long game, but he says it's got everything in it a hockey game would have. So for me, being a hockey fan, one day I will play this game, but it's everything from the puck goes into the corner, you battle in the corner. You see who comes up the puck. You see what he does with the puck. Then they fight to get the puck, when you make the pass. It is pass by pass type of game from what I understand. So it's something that he said it's going to take you a few hours to play. There's no way around it. And he says, just take little chunks of that game and learn little chunks at a time, because there's so much to it. So that would be something that you couldn't do a season replay with. But for me, because I'm a hockey fan, I might be, and I am going to be tempted to play that one day and just try to see what I can make out of that game.
Is the reward worth the effort?
Well, that's the thing, is I want to try that out. When I'm done, did I get, boy, when I'm done that game, if it takes me hours and hours and hours, what do I think? So
I would never do a pitch by pitch replay.
Yeah.
For baseball.
Yeah, but if there was a game that was pitch by pitch and was really fun, you might do it once or twice. If you had a special, maybe a game, you're playing a replay and you get to Game 7. I'm going to play this out pitch by pitch.
I've thought about it.
That's kind of where I'm getting at here. You know, that would be a special playthrough. It would not be a game I would buy a ton of seasons and play a ton of games.
That's
Yeah. Moving on. The strikeout tallier on my YouTube channel, Scott Long, writes in instructions again that leave you guessing if you're playing a game correctly because you can't find a clear answer to a game situation. Game charts that have you flipping 2 to 4 pages to get a result, and then flipping again. So
I'm with him. I'm not huge into multiple charts.
He says what he does to overcome the obstacles, and that's one thing we ask people too, is how do you overcome these obstacles?
Yep.
As he converted the paper score sheets into an Excel spreadsheet for documentations, and that seemed to help as well. So he found a way around some of these things here. So let's see. Craig S. says, my main 2 obstacles are the desperate need to keep track of the statistics in his game. And if the game takes longer than the real-life sport, he's out.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So he says he's embraced games like scoreboard baseball, shootout hockey, and Dice United. You get the statistics you want without having to play and toil for 3 hours to get them. So there's another check for time.
There's a huge amount of comments that deal with stat keep being the hurdle.
Yes, there has been. Turbocharge actually chimed in and says, I echo everyone's sentiments on stat keeping and stat compiling. Yeah, and that's why we keep going back to Digital Diamond version 10 or 11. That has really rejuvenated my cards and dice playing, because I didn't play a lot of cards and dice baseball because I would just do a one-off or a series or something. That was it. But now, because it's simulating other games and it's tallying all my stats, right, I'm having a blast with it. In fact, I'm going to be embarking, probably mostly offline, but some online as well, the 78 Red Sox. I'm going to try to play every game in app. I just bought the season, and that particular season has every player carded, I believe. So I'm going to be playing the Sox from start to finish and see how I do with 78 Sox. But I can do that now because of Digital Diamond. Now, to be fair, Replay does it and Strat does it, so I got to be fair with that. I just find that for me, I find that the Digital Diamond Companion is a lot faster for me. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm looking to do a full season replay, I want to go, ground ball, bing, bing, done. And the other one's a lot of clicking, which I thought I liked better, but now when I can just type in, G6, it takes a second to put in a ground ball, So I do like this. So stat keeping, yes, is another big thing. Let me see here. Scrolling down.
In football, it's almost impossible.
Okay. Adirondack Gus chimes in and says, only time for me was playing Ice Nuts Hockey and having a game that ended 12-8. He goes, it was so frustrating to see a game end up like this. The next couple of games, however, things came back to earth scoring-wise. And that happens a lot, is you're playing a game, and we talked about first impressions of a game.
Yes.
And so you play a game, and it's just, wow, that was nuts. Like the game I played the other night with all those penalties. I mean, I think I have 12 rows of penalties for each team, and I went out of the rows. In fact, Minnesota was 2 for 12 on the power play. They had 12 power plays in that game that I played the other night. Now, I got to keep in mind that, that was one game, and I could have no penalties the next game. This is, probably not, but you know what I'm saying. And remember when I played the 71-72 Stanley Cup Finals, and the Rangers crushed the Bruins in 4 games. And I was like, okay, blah, 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 blah. And then I played it in APA, and it was a 5-game win for the Rangers. So I'm like, well, okay. So sometimes things do come out in the wash. If you do play enough games, you'll get the odd 12-8 game in hockey, but then you'll get some 2-2s and 3-2s, and it'll come back to earth. Certainly
see where it'd be frustrating if you bought a new game and not familiar with, from from one of the other companies and not familiar with how it goes, and you pull it out, and the first time you play, you get something that's kind of out of the envelope for realism. And so, yes, that's the first impression. And it really the hurdle is, oh my God, this experience just didn't. What do you mean the New Jersey Devils beat the Detroit Red Wings 12-8 in 2000? That would never have happened. The absolute extreme of that. Do I dare pull it out again? Can I trust it to give me what I want? Did I play it wrong?
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Oh yeah, you do think that. I thought that when I played that game. I was like, it was 10-8, and the game before that was 9-2. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I was like, no.
Yeah, there must be something that I'm doing wrong. And like, nope, okay.
But occasionally the dice rolls just they can happen. They just happen. Dice rolls. Last night I played a one-off game, and the Bruins are playing an expansion team, and just Bobby Orr had a couple of goals because I just kept rolling low. All my dice rolls were low, which is good for getting shots on net. There's other games you play where you're rolling high and there's no shots on net. So, that can happen too.
Random number generators are indeed random.
Yeah. Another one here from Craig S. He goes, some things in sports just naturally feel intrusive obstacles in gaming. For example, penalties in hockey and football and error checks in baseball.
We've talked about this offline an awful lot, especially how to handle penalties in hockey.
It just
and in football.
When a game grinds to a halt, and there's a handful of games that I play that have mental obstacles for me that I really like to play, and I put my hand on the box and I pull it out and I'm like, oh, wait a sec. This is the game that when a penalty comes up, the game just comes to a complete stop for me, and I got to get off the bus and go check into a hotel while I sort out what happens. And so so penalties, especially in hockey and football, they're just, you grunt and you groan. I mean, they're part of the game, but
error checks in baseball, I don't usually have a problem with it. Just kind of because usually it's just one extra dice roll or one extra hold of breath, but in any game in hockey where you got to check for first if a player fails the penalty check, and then you got to roll to see what the penalty is, and then you got to see if there's a misconduct there. Like, just move on to the next play. He's in the box.
Yeah, and he goes on to say, I think it's essentially anything that breaks the flow of the main gaming loop. Yeah, that's exactly right, kind of grinding to a halt. And he goes, oddly, such things as rare plays, which definitely break the flow of the main loop, are generally considered fun, while penalties and errors are not. And I would say that the rare plays are rare, whereas penalties and errors are going to come up much more frequently, and if that's going to bring the game to a grinding halt several times, then you're going to have that obstacle.
I think that a rare play just kind of brings up a bit more anticipation too. You get in a football game, and I did this a few times at Strat, mainly rolling my own dice, and you know that you keep rolling that 2 or 3 with the black die, that's a penalty check.
Yeah.
So you got to run the rest of the play, and then you roll for the penalty, and then you don't know until you're all done with the sequence.
Yeah, you play out the whole play, and sometimes you play it all out for nothing.
Okay, you got on the card. All right, did I hit the long gain? Offside. Offense. Oh,
yeah. I know it's part of the thing, but it is frustrating on the tabletop.
Yeah, I mean, if you want the manual experience of rolling all that out, I mean, that there's you take the goose with the gander, but that gets frustrating.
Yeah, the rare play thing, I think you're right. If done correctly, rare plays can work. I wasn't using them in season ticket baseball. In one game I did, and a rare play come up. And it was a hit to center field, and the center fielder slammed into the wall. And the ball rolled around, and the batter got a triple, but you could try for an inside-the-park home run. And at the time, the team was winning by enough runs that I said, I'm going to go for the inside-the-park home run. And I rolled the runner speed against the throwing arm of the outfielder, and I beat the throw home when it's inside-the-park home run.
That's always exciting.
And you know who it was?
Who?
It was a Dodger.
Steve Garvey?
Ron Say.
Rod say the Penguin.
The Penguin got and I posted that. And I got some pretty nasty responses. And I was like, you understand, this was a rare play where he hit it deep into center field, which he could do, and the center fielder crashed. And that ball's just sitting there for who knows how many seconds. Now, you and I could, if that ball's sitting there and no one's got it, and the center fielder's incapacitated, you and I could run around the bases,
Bill Buckner in 1990 hit it inside the park home run.
Yeah, so it's a rare play. That's why it's a rare play. It's probably the only time he'll ever hit it inside the park home run for me. But I thought it was great, so sometimes that can work out really well. So the rare plays, he's right. Sometimes they grind to a halt, but in a good way. Now, conversely, come back to turbocharge again. He says, true, the break of the flow can be annoying. However, and he goes, I think I'm an outlier on this. He goes, I don't mind the penalties and the injuries and the error checks and the rare plays because it's a part of the game. So there's a, it's an obstacle for one person, but not for another.
I think it depends on how the game itself handles it. In Status Pro, you have an error check maybe 50% of the time.
Yeah.
On an out chance.
But it's quick. It's a quick error check.
But it's just one more flip of the card, and it's very easy to understand. And if they pass the check, okay. So it's not that much of an obstacle.
Yeah. But, I mean, in some games it is. But for some people, that's kind of their bread and butter of the game. It's like, oh, good, I'm going to check this and see what happens. They don't mind it. And other people, oh, there goes the flow. So I like that back and forth discussion there where for some people it was an obstacle and for other people it was not. Let's head over to our Facebook group, and we had some good responses over there.
Yep.
Kevin brings up something here, and he says, I would say games that you have to refigure or recalculate things in the middle of the game. So, yeah, anytime you got to stop and refigure, that can be kind of frustrating. And
do the letters O-D-A-I mean anything to you, Mr. Gardner?
I have overcome that obstacle. Thank you very much. Thank you. Who was it? Thank you, Mike Berger, and we're going to have him on the show, and I'm going to thank him so much. I might even have a gift for him. I don't know, but yes. So I've overcome that obstacle.
The Kermets or the turtle wax?
Yeah. Behind curtain number 3. So yes, and there was one particular game. There was a football game, and I haven't played it in a long time. That was you were reconfiguring every play. You had to reconfigure the defense against. I don't know what it was, but I was just like, oh my gosh, if I just can't have a standard defense here, but every, and I remember that I created a bunch of charts for this game to help me play it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you can still see the video. The last video I did, I says, I have so many charts here I could sail around the world. Just trying to make this football game work. And then someone suggested, just don't do the defensive adjustment. Just kind of, if they're a 2, leave it a 2. Don't adjust for every single play because that's when it got out of hand. So yeah, I would agree with that. Also, he says, things that keep making you go from one chart to another chart to another chart. It depends. That all depends, actually. Sometimes charts can flow, and sometimes they don't flow. But I can see that would be a sticking point and an obstacle in a game.
You look at a game like Stone Cold Hockey, where you could get possibly 4 different results on any given play. But they're all on the same sheet. So if it's not A, it's B. And if it's not B, it's C. And if it's not C, it has to be D.
Yeah, that flows pretty well, yeah.
That flows pretty well. But if you got to be flipping pages back and forth, again, and if you're tired, it's one thing you're sitting down and doing the session looking forward to playing the game. But if you're tired or you've been interrupted a lot of times, that's huge.
Yeah. Now, I will say that a game like second season from Play, the football game, second season, I think the original book did a lot of that. Whereas you would say, okay, hand off to the running back. Okay, now flip to page 14. Go to page 14. Okay, now I get this. Now flip back to page 10. And it's like, forget it. Just all that for a 2-yard run. They streamlined their chart book to a point where when you opened it up, you open up like a book, on the left side would be the dice roll and the play. And if you needed to go anywhere, you just went to the right side of the page, and
Right.
90% of the plays were done like that. And that included penalties and things, too. Now, if it was intercepted or there was something crazy that happened, then, yeah, you got to go to the turnover chart or whatever. But for the most part, because I heard horror stories about that game. And when I got the game in, I was like, what are you talking about? Everything is right here. You know, you flip to run versus safe defense, and 90% of the plays are done right here. There's no flipping. So kudos to them for fixing that.
Right.
But yeah, the original play where it was like chart to chart to chart, like, oh my gosh, yeah, I can see how that would be a little too much. He also talks about setup time as an obstacle. And so he says, and then just time itself. He says, hockey, football, and basketball can take a long time to play, sometimes over 2 hours. And he says, while it won't keep him from playing the game, there are a lot of times when I just have a spare hour or hour and a half, and I can't fit those games in. And, yeah, we talked about time, and you just brought that up. It's 10:30 at night. Everyone's in bed. I want to play a game here. Do I want to play a 2.5-hour game at 10:30 at night?
Right. How involved do you want to get?
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, here's one that Will brought up on Facebook, and I want to address this. He talks about a couple things, but one thing he gets on, he goes, one of the other hurdles I see with games is how easy they are to play out of the box. And he says, do I have to spend a lot of time loading pictures, stadiums, logos, and other things? And I will say this, though. Games cannot put in logos in fields and pictures in stadiums. They're not allowed to do that.
Reasons, yes.
Yeah, they get in a lot of trouble for that. So the workaround...
the only one that can do that is OOTP.
Right.
They can do logos and fields, but they're not endorsed by the Players Association, so they can't do pictures.
Yeah. So, but what a lot of these games do is they will give you the team colors a lot of time, but they do allow you to put in the team nicknames. And then you can add the pictures a lot of times in stadiums and logos. So games will do it that way because they have to. You know, they can't go and put in all the logos for you. Now, I know OOTP does because they have the license, but a lot of these companies are smaller companies. They don't have the money it takes to buy licenses for that.
Right.
And
licenses are hugely expensive.
Yeah, so it's one of these things that is just, you know, and I get it. He says he thinks it might be a barrier for getting more people into the hobby. And while I agree that a lot of us that come over from video games are used to having all the players and all the logos and all the fields in our games and all the rinks or whatever it is, whether you're playing hockey, baseball, football, they're all in there. But these smaller games cannot do that. So you do have to put them in yourself. But they allow you to do it. And the thing is, you don't have to. But
right.
So I see his point. But there's a like I say, just a big financial reason why they can't do that. There's no way that they could afford that kind of bill there.
And in return, at least OOTP 23, if you have a fight on the mound, it will not show it. MLB will not allow them to show a fight.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting. Yep. Mark writes in on Facebook, one of the biggest obstacles for him is anything that can be gamed, manipulated, or abused.
Yes.
In terms of a coaching decision that can be exploited to an unrealistic degree.
All games can be exploited to some degree. You figure out how the game works, you can kind of reverse engineer it, and then if you want to run the ball 87 times against a defense, you know you're going to get 400 yards. It just if once you figure out how a game works to that degree, then it's no longer fun to play if you know you can always beat it.
Right. Yeah. So, but like you said earlier, you know, a lot of times you're on the honor system here to not.
You're definitely on the honor system.
You can't run Tony Dorsett every single play and expect, you know, realistic results or to make that
one
fun.
of the most notorious flaws in a game is Appa's hit and run system. 31, I believe, on a hit and run is a single. 2 bases. And so there's limits in tournaments and how many times you can call for a hit and run. It's just a flaw within the game itself. And so, yeah, we don't want to play the game itself. We want to play the sport we're trying to replicate. We want to play baseball. We don't want to play. We're trying to play hockey or baseball or football. We don't want to play apple ball. We don't want to play strap ball. I mean, that's what he's trying to talk about there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Steve writes in, he goes, for tabletop games, he goes, do they have the seasons I want?
Yes.
And we talked about that, too. That's kind of getting into the game. That's an important part of his seasons. Do the rules allow for a good game flow? Yep. So if you got a game that doesn't flow, that's an obstacle. And he talks about space. Does the game have a large footprint? So there's another one that talks about setup space. And is the time that takes to set up and play the game excessive? So again, it's a time thing and a setup thing, and that seems to be some of the bigger things: is time and setup in games.
Well, I would think that, especially in the day and age of computer, where you could be set up playing a game in, let's say, OOTP or Action PC in about 30 seconds at most.
Yeah.
I think some of the anticipation comes with the setup in a card and dice game. Oh, here's where I'm going to go. But if it takes you an hour just to roll the first dice.
It used to take me, when I played Appa Hockey, it used to take me a half hour to set up.
That's a long time.
Yeah, because I'd lay out my rink, and it would take me, 10 minutes to say to let out the cards and get the lines going and the whole bit, because I like to have the lines as they were in kind of real life. So I try to put out the correct lines. So that takes the time. But then it was all the charts. It was having all the face-off charts and the scoring charts and what happens on the play. There was so many charts in app. I had them all lined up, and I had to sneak a couple under the computer, and I tried to make it so I could see everything here on my desktop.
Right.
And it was like, man, it just would take forever. Then if I was going to stream, I had to get the camera and the lights going. So it would take me an hour to set up to stream a game of Appa Hockey. Now with that Appa Hockey helper, the only time it's just the 5 or 10 minutes to lay out the cards, because everything is in that Excel helper. The dice rolls. It doesn't keep the stats, so I do need to have my score sheet off to the side, but I had that anyway. But as far as setup, all the charts are right in the Excel helper. All the dice rolls are in there. Everything I need is in that Excel sheet. So my time to set up an Appa Hockey game is now 5 or 10 minutes. How long it takes me just to put the players on the mat and lay out the cards. That's it. There's no more chart setup. There's no more what am I going to put here? How am I going to lay up this chart? Oh, I get this light in the way. No more of that. Everything's on the computer, and the rest of my desk is wide open. So, yeah, that was another good one there that you brought up.
I mean, there's a balance. I mean, when can you actually get to playing?
Yep. Mike from the truck chimes in. He goes, I'm guessing you may discuss hard drive space for Pro Strategy Football. Yeah, that is an obstacle, because right now with Pro Strategy Football, you have to install to the C drive, and there's a lot of graphics on there. It's beautiful. That game is beautiful.
Yes, it is.
But I can only put a couple of seasons on at a time on my C drive because there's not a lot of space on there. So for me, I put on a season and I'll play that. That if I want to play another season, I got to take that first season off sometimes. It's like that's in my head. It's like, am I really going to go into my file manager and delete this and then move this over just to play a football game? It's like, probably not.
And there are people who are still using 10-year-old computers.
Mine's 5 years old, and it's just
right.
I don't have the hard drive space for it. Now, if I could use the D drive, and they're kind of working on that, and I could just dump, 20 or 30 seasons of graphics onto the D drive and still have plenty of space, and I could play that game at will any season I wanted to.
Right.
Perfect. That's the way to go. But yeah, so that's another thing. Computer space, depending on the game, could be an issue. Yep. So we will say that. And again, Pro Strategy Football is an awesome game.
Yes, it is.
But I will say that's an obstacle for me, is just not having the hard drive space to put on as many seasons as I want to play.
You really don't want to do a lot of prep work when it comes to a computer game. The whole point of playing on the PC is to be able just to get and go.
Put your feet up and go. Yep, exactly. Sure. Friend of the show, Philip Reynolds writes in.
Yep.
Sometimes difficulty, obscure, or confusing rules. Yep, so here's another one on the rules of the game that can be put an obstacle and put you off from playing. And he also talks about time constraints. He likes his games to be about 30 to 45 minutes long, and some of his games take longer than that. So there's another one that wants time is an issue. So when he sits down to play a game, he's going to figure out what game he's going to play. And
I think there's only so long before our brains start to turn to mush.
Yeah, but sometimes, like I say, you sit down and play a game, and you're like, "Oh my god, do I want to do?" Again,
Right.
it's like it's the shrug of the shoulders. When you think about what goes on in that particular game. And let's see here. And Jimmy writes in, he goes, if I start a season replay, he goes, he's got to have the PC version of that season or some type of digital tracker or companion like Digital Diamond. And he says, I got several seasons of Strat baseball seasons that I haven't played because I don't have the PC season yet. So he's thank goodness for Digital Diamond to resolve that problem because they come with all the seasons. Yeah. So there's another one there and that was my thing too. I didn't play a lot of baseball cards and dice because I'd have to either buy the season or whatever. But now with the Digital Diamond, I'm playing. Seriously, I get 1905 set up, 1908 set up. I figured out how to load that into the game. I got the spiders in there. I got all the modern seasons ready to go. I have so many seasons ready to play. Cards and dice now. Cards and dice. I'm talking in Digital Diamond. It's ridiculous. And so, yeah, that's been a lifesaver.
Some people, have the notebooks and keep score and all that and do it. And they've been doing it since they were 12 or 13, and they're used to that. But again, stat keeping cuts into your gaming time. Is it more important for you to do the stats again, And again, there's no right answer to that.
Some people love that. That's part of the gaming experience is doing the stats, and some people love that. And I've done that from time to time and enjoyed it. I was like, okay, this is kind of fun. But there's other times it's like, man, if I could have the computer or an app or something keep track of the stats while I'm playing the game, I can A, enjoy the game and play it, and then B, when I'm done, I have a nice box score all ready to go, and all my stats are done, and I can look at it, and I can share it, and I can talk about it, and I can ooh and ah over who did what in that game. And so for me, I do like the companion. That's just me.
Yeah.
Let me see. All right, Jeff talks about, he goes, he wants an easy workflow. He goes, fast games especially, but not at the expense of realistic games, action, and stats. He goes, he doesn't like a lot of charts. And he wants a purposeful flow from one to the other if he does.
Yeah.
So there's another one. He says he's and most importantly, offering the season he wants to play in cards and dice. So there's another one for seasons and another one for charts.
I don't think that people will spend 2 or 3 hours to do something as long as the process keeps moving. Mm-hmm. It has to move along.
Everett writes in, he goes, this is probably a common answer, but enough space to play certain games. This includes the space to set up the game and leave the game set up for a few days. So, there's another one on space. In fact, I'm looking to branch out from my sports sims and play some other tabletop games, solo games. And so I've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube about games to play and, even some of the Star Wars games that they have and some of the things where you get the little miniatures and play, and thought about, setting up over there on Studio A and see if I could leave it set up and play. So I get that. But some of these, they take up a lot of space, more space than I have. And it's like, well, as fun as that might be, it's not going to happen in my house. Let's see.
You mean you didn't leave the Risk game on the table overnight? We've done it, a few times when I was younger, just because, the dog. Who invaded Kamchatka? The dog.
And when you did that, wasn't it kind of cool when you get up in the morning and you see it still sitting there?
Yeah,
there was always something about
absolutely.
That. And I do that even now when I set up something over there. Even here at Studio B, if I set up something and I play a period or I play a quarter and I leave it set up, I come down, it's like, there it is, ready to go.
There it is, and you're ready to go.
Yeah. John writes in, he goes, Digital Diamond solved my aversion to cards and dice replays just for stat-keeping purposes alone. The companion is fantastic. Absolutely, John. I played cards and dice baseball very sparingly. Now Digital Diamond, that's all I'm playing right now. And I'm buying seasons from other games so I can play
it. I would love a football keeper like that.
If I could get a hockey one, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You know what we need to do? We need to kidnap Mark. Right? And bring him in a room with some computers and say, you need to make a hockey companion, all right? And we'll bring in food every now and then, and we'll give you Netflix so you can catch up on whatever.
Beverage of choice on Saturdays, yeah.
That's the only way I can figure out we can get a hockey companion done. And he says, John brings up this too. In other cards and dice games like basketball and football, sometimes feels like I'm going through the motions rather than strategizing when I play solo. That's probably my biggest hurdle with those, unlike baseball, which seems so much more solo friendly.
Yeah, I'm not. I've done much more solo basketball than solo football. Although I think Sega Nintendo does a very good job of doing solo football. But you're right, because in a game like basketball, you have to resolve 160 shot attempts, and who set those up in that. And again, it can be very intense when it goes well. But you're in the middle of a 30-point blowout. Can't we just get this done? And so, yes.
But I think, too, when it comes down to solo play, football's probably the hardest because you're playing against yourself. And I know that games like Second Season, Fast Drive Football, Fast Action Football, Solitaire Pro Football, they all have kind of an automated defense setting. So you're not guessing defense and offense, so you can just play offense in both. But I can see that, again, it's sometimes you want to just play against a team and you're playing offense and defense. And so I can see how solo football, you need to have the right game for that. You really do. All right, and the final comment comes from another supporter of the show, Mark Unger. He goes, one of his biggest hurdles or obstacles, when the computer manager or coach makes a dumb or unrealistic decision, it really frustrates him and takes him out of the experience. Because it reminds me that we're just playing math games.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he tries to remedy that situation by taking control as much as he can.
For the only game that I really play against the AI is Action PC. All my Strat and Status Pro, I'm playing against myself. So if I lose, so I'm always 50%. With Strat Football, I only play the one team. But play calling is so much, easier. So do that. Yeah. I get a lot of enjoyment, Mark, out of playing against myself.
So here's a couple. We'll wrap up a few things here, and then I'll go on to a few things that weren't discussed that I consider maybe could be hurdles. So we talked about the setup, and we talked about keeping stats.
Right.
Okay? Space was a big one for a lot of people.
Time
as well to play a game. Confusing rules.
Yep.
Another one. Grinding to a halt, and we talked about mostly with penalties or chart flipping when a game grinds to a halt. Yep. Sometimes a game can just be too complex and too long. So, I mean, what are you getting? Are you getting the bang for the buck out of this game with this game that's either too complex or too long? Here's a few that weren't talked about that I'm going to bring up. Missing players. So, in other words, you sit down to play a game, and it's like, hey, I'm going to play this game from X date, and you sit down, and whatever game you're playing, that you're missing a player or two. And that happened to me, and I forget what game it was I was playing, but I sat down, and I said, okay, I'm going to try to play this game here and figure this out, and I was missing a couple of players, one for each team. And I was like, not the end of the world, because I can just substitute in for them, but it did kind of take me out of the moment when I said, where's this guy? Oh, he's not carded. So obviously it must have been somebody that just filled in sparingly, and I get it, the whole argument, but when I sit down...
Imagine trying to do a modern baseball sim with 60 players on a team in a given year.
Oh, gee. Yeah. Well, yeah, I understand that, but for me, like when I sit down and I go to do a game and everyone's there, it pleases the court. You know what I mean? It just... So for me, missing players can be a hurdle. So I know that if I'm going to go and, whatever game that was I was playing, whatever team that was, well, that guy's missing, so I won't be doing a full as-played, schedule with them. Some other thing I thought about was card size. Sometimes the card size can be too big or too small. They really can be. There's some games I play that I have some cards that are so big, I can't fit them on my table. And I got some that are so small that I was like, oh boy, these are really small.
Oh, and you're just begging to get those lost.
Yeah, yep. And then right alongside that is the font size in some of these cards.
Older eyes.
Yep,
older eyes.
I think someone actually brought that up somewhere too. That was talking about the
color blindness. Yeah.
Yeah, and I went back and watched P-Jet's rant on Apple Hockey and how some of the numbers on the Apple Hockey card are really small, and they are. They're really small. But there's a lot of cards that have really small fonts on them as well, and font size. So, yep. And the last one, I'm surprised nobody brought this one up. And this is probably one of my biggest obstacles is Rust. When you haven't played a game in quite some time, you're like, and I look over here, it's like, oh, I haven't played blah 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 in quite some time, and then you're like,
you was talking about this today before we went on. I pulled out the rules for Motorsport again. I haven't played that in forever.
Yeah, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like, how do I play this again? And so you have to relearn the game. Now you relearn it faster, obviously, because you've already played it. But there's a handful of games I know right now. If I pulled out to play, I would have to read the rule book all over again. Either that or go watch one of my own videos on YouTube or somebody else's video. And I've done that before. It's like, well, got to go to YouTube and figure out how to play this game again because I haven't played it in so long. And some of these games, it's not that they're complex, but there's a lot of steps. And if you don't
every
remember,
game is different.
Yeah, you don't remember.
Every game is different, right?
Like APA baseball and Strat Basic baseball, you could put those on the table, and in 5 minutes you're up and running. It doesn't matter what it is. But there's some other ones that are like, oh yeah, no, this is not one I can just throw on the table. This is one I'm going to need to give myself some time. So Rust for me is one of my biggest obstacles when it comes to sitting down and deciding what game I want to play. So, but I'm surprised nobody brought that up.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
All right. Before we go off this top, do you have any that weren't mentioned?
Am I able to physically play the game? That's a specific obstacle for me.
Right.
How can we manipulate a game so I can play it? Rust is a good one. I hadn't thought of that.
When you go to pull out a game, and again, 90% of your games are on the computer,
right?
What are some of the things that when you're like, oh man, I'd like to play this game, but boy, I tell you, I'd have to deal with X, and I don't know if I feel like dealing with X today.
I think even the computer, because even the cards that, the virtual cards and dice games I play, you still have to set up Excel spreadsheets. You got to be able to keep track of what's going on in the game and how many, we mentioned it earlier, how many, Adobe tabs do I have open for PDFs and all that. And how do I get the cards converted so I can use them? But for the computer games, it's like, do I like this game enough? Have they changed the game enough from one year to the next for me to want to play it again?
Right.
I suppose would be one of those things. And I think that would be about, I think, the biggest one. And I mean, because setup time is a big one. Because again, even though you're not, putting cards and dice on a table and charts, how does that manipulate it? And by the time you get it done, do you still want to play?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's much more the physicality of it. And again, the other thing is, especially with computer games, how well is it going to run on your system?
Yeah. Yeah, if you got a game that chugs along, there's a couple computer games that, for some reason, aren't running that well anymore on my computer, and I avoid playing them because there's such a delay to them.
There's one game that slows way down the longer you play it, and that's why it doesn't get played, because it zips right along in the front. I've got a state-of-the-art gaming laptop, for crying out loud. I should not have trouble running anything.
I shouldn't be waiting for a dice roll to appear on my screen.
Right.
And it's just, we're probably talking about the same game.
I'm sure we're talking about the same game. And so, so that would be about that.
All righty. Well, before we wrap things up, and before we go, thanks to everybody that commented.
My goodness, that was
Holy
great.
cow! Yeah, we dropped that into Patreon to our Patreon people on Discord, and we immediately got responses. And then we went into the Facebook group. We got even more. And there was some ones I didn't even think about. So kudos to everybody that added a response to that question there, and that's why we do that is to hear from you guys here. So fantastic show, a lot of great responses there as well. Before we sign off, we got to do our 3 stars of the week.
Woohoo!
All righty. In no particular order, star number 3 is JT Dutch.
Yay!
JT, thank you so much.
His Kings made the playoffs.
Yeah. What are they playing? Oh, they're playing Edmonton, though. Oh, that's going to be tough, I think. They were talking about that on NHL radio this morning. Second star of the week for episode 179 was Craig S.
Yay!
Craig, thank you so much for supporting us on the show. And number 1 star this week, a new Patreon, James H.
Woohoo!
James, thank you so much. And congratulations to our 3 stars of the week. And before we sign off, we do got to say a big thank you to our Patreon people who support the show, and to everybody that listens to the show. As we said at the top of the show, we just
top 2.5%.
We just found out that Digital to Dice is in the top 2.5% of podcasts in the world. That's so awesome. I had no idea that's how high up the rank we were. But
that's incredible.
Again, thanks to all you guys here. And as we're in year 4 of the podcast, and in a couple of months or so, we'll be starting up year 5. We might have to do something special for that. We'll have to brainstorm that as far as what we can do for the kickoff of year 5. That's going to be in August, I think, right?
Mid-July.
July. So that's only 3 months away. Okay, I have some ideas, so we'll kick around some ideas, and we'll see if we can get anything going for that. All right, so let's crank up the music. And
before we go,
okay,
good thoughts, prayers, good wishes to Dave Little.
Oh yes,
who had emergency eye surgery earlier this week, and to the point where he really can't move that much for a full week. We're thinking of you. Hope that you do well, and I look forward to getting my butt kicked in Words with Friends with you really soon.
Hopefully he can still play. So if he's in bed, he can probably still play Words with Friends. So, or Wordle, whatever he plays there.
Don't give him any ideas. Okay?
Get well, Dave. Get well.
We're thinking of you, buddy.
So you have been listening to the Digital to Dice podcast, episode 179, where we talked about obstacles in our games. Ways to get a hold of us, digitaltodice.com is the website. 978-751-DICE is the dice line. Send us a text. digitaltodice@yahoo.com is where you can send us an email. And over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. All righty, 179 is a wrap.
Wow.
Yep. We'll have 180 coming up. And again, we have to start planning something really cool for our 5-year, the kickoff of year 5.
Year 5 and 200 are coming up soon.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out something good for that. So anyway, I'm Dave.
I'm Ron.
We'll talk to everybody later.
Bye-bye.